With training camp starting for a select group of players and opening wide to the full roster on the 29th, on today's episode, I want to go position by position group and talk about the biggest question at each of those position groups for the Chicago Bears heading into the 2026 season. At least one. There's going to be multiple questions for some position groups, but at least one question for each position group. Plus, we're going to look at CBS Sports, and they just threw a lot of hate towards, we're going to say hate towards our quarterback, Caleb Williams. We're going to talk about all that plus more right after this. What's going on, Bears fans? Welcome to another episode of Chicago Bears Central, your number one spot for everything Chicago Bears related. I'm the host there, Haize, but more importantly, you guys can follow the channel at Chi Bears Central on every social media platform we happen to be on. With that said, let's go into this content for today, y'all. So I want to look at position group by position group and give at least one question for each major position group or for each position group for the Chicago Bears. Now, like I said, some of these positions are going to have more than one question, but let's start off at the top at the quarterback position. And it just simply is this. Does Caleb Williams make that MVP level leap that a lot of people are expecting and hoping to see from Caleb Williams? You know, it's great. Caleb Williams came in. He was just ranked as the 51st player overall in the NFL by his peers, which I think says a lot about how football players view Caleb Williams, even though there are some fans that still kind of focus on things that he doesn't do more than what he does do extremely well. But to make that leap in fairness, you do have to tighten up the things that you don't do well. You have to get better at those things to make that leap, that the next leap that we want to see from Caleb Williams. So I think the fair question for him is, does he make that? In year 3, does he make that leap into truly being in the MVP caliber and conversation for players, whatever that looks like, right? This isn't about a specific stat input or anything like that, but does it feel like it? When you watch Caleb Williams play football this year, when the Bears are on the field with Caleb and we're moving the ball and those type of things, does it feel like an MVP caliber season? Does it feel like a guy that's taking that next step in his understanding of the offense like we've heard and things like that? Do those things bear out for the Chicago Bears this year? That's the biggest question here, and Caleb is up to the test. I think he's really up to the test. I think Ben Johnson is going to continue to put him in the proper situations so that he can continue to make those steps as a quarterback. But for the quarterback position, it's just one. Does Caleb Williams make that MVP leap? And if he does, what does that then mean for the Bears? What does that mean for our win total this year? But again, those are separate questions. For the running back position, I actually have a couple of questions for the running back position. For the top two is like I said this before, does Kyle Monangai show more flashes of running back one type production, right? And that's not a knock on him. Like I've said it before, if Kyle Monangai ends up being, a great running back in a dual running back threat, there's no problem with that at all. But it's just a question that I have. Like, Kyle Monangai was so good last year, so good. And does he make a next step where you start looking at him and like, hey, listen, this guy is really doing those things? But outside of that, I think the other question, just for the fairness of having a new one, is that, is Roschon Johnson actually going to play running back this year? Is he going to play running back this year? He was listed as the running back 3 all last year, but he had more tackles than he had carries. Now, he was injured some last year as well, but you got a guy like Cole Kmet who has a lot of the same strengths, even as an undrafted free agent, which at running back 3, that's perfectly fine at being there, right? What are you going to do there? And, Roschon's been a guy that came into the league, had some initial promise. I think by the end of his second year, he was getting most of the snaps there at running back. But then at that point, he's never taken that next step after that. And you can make a case that he's actually gotten worse in some cases with injuries and other things like that. So Roschon, it's just what does it look like? Does Roschon get on the field as a running back this year? How does he look? Or does he even get passed up as the running back 3 and somebody like Coleman Bennett or Britton Brown or somebody else pass him up in that regard? I think either way, I think Roschon's time with the Chicago Bears is coming to an end personally, but we'll see. I've been wrong on that before. We'll see if I'm wrong again, but that's the question that I have for the running back. Wide receiver, I got a couple of questions for wide receiver. Number one, I think this is the biggest one that you have. Who steps up and replaces the consistency of DJ Moore? I'm not talking about statistical output. I'm talking about the consistency, the thing that isn't necessarily measurable on the stat sheet. DJ Moore, every time you called his name, whether he went 5 snaps without getting target or he went 10 snaps without getting target or he got the ball on 3 straight possessions, at the end of the day, like DJ Moore was such a consistent factor and a floor raiser for this team in that wide receiver room. So are Rome Odunze, Luther Burden, or anybody else ready to replicate that? Now there's a big case to be made that Colston Loveland could be the guy, especially with the Bears going to use him more at the slot this year and that type of stuff, that he can be the guy. But I'm hoping one of these wide receivers step up and that we come out of this season feeling like Rome and Luther are both at that spot, whether you look at them as 1A, 1B, one's a 1, one's a wide receiver 2, or however you look at it, but we feel very confident in that wide receiver room. But the other question, I think, for this group as well is, how does the wide receiver 3 shake out? I already have kind of expected Khalif Raymond to be named as the wide receiver 3, but between Jahdae Walker, Khalif Raymond, Xavion Thomas, how do we see this work out over the course of the season? How do these guys balance out, the things that they're called upon and asked to do this season? And I think that we have so much versatility at that wide receiver 3. And with Colston Loveland also at times lining up at the slot, it's going to be a really important season for us to make that step. Caleb is going to have the weapons there. I think Ben Johnson is going to scheme up each of those guys differently and in the correct way. And that could be such a benefit for a Bears team and an offense that many people already think is going to be elite this season. But having that wide receiver 3, having that consistent production there, I think that's going to be big for this Bears team. So at the wide receiver, like I said, who steps up and replaces that consistency of DJ Moore? Then how does the wide receiver 3 position look? Does it end up turning into this versatile toolbox like I talked about before? Like, that's really what it seems like it's shaping up for, is that depending on the matchup, the scheme, and what we're trying to do on even any given drive, Ben Johnson can go into that wide receiver 3 toolbox and pull out whatever specific tool he needs in that, between Jahdae, between Khalif, between Xavion, and even then going to Colston Loveland, sometimes lining in at the slot too with his ability to route run and stuff like that. So it's going to be really fun to watch. And I think that this could be one of the wide receiver 3 position could be one of those things that, not to say that any one of those guys is going to have the crazy statistical output, but the impact that they have on the game each and every day is going to be felt. It could be one of the things that becomes an identifier for the Chicago Bears team, that is a part of the identity and who we are in the lifeblood of this team. So definitely looking at that. The tight end position, right? I think the tight end position comes down to the balance between all 3 tight ends. Sam Roush, Cole Kmet, Colston Loveland. I know some people are going to say, well, is Sam Roush going to be so good that we end up trading Cole Kmet? I'm not really interested in having that conversation yet, right? Because I think at this point, Sam Roush hasn't shown anything yet, and it's because the season hasn't even started. But even outside the not having time to really show anything at this point either, it just comes down to, if this tight end group is so good and offers us such a ability to create mismatches against other defenses, I'll say this: who's to say that we won't keep it? As long as we don't have to, until Colston Loveland's up for an extension. Yeah, Cole Kmet's getting paid, but I think it's a really reasonable contract. Who's to say we just don't keep it until Cole Kmet's contract ends up getting moved off, right, or expiring or whatever it is? So I'm really looking at that, the 12-man, 13-man personnel, the balance that we have, the fact that we have, all these guys can block, all these guys can catch passes. Colston Loveland's probably the best route runner, but it's not like tight ends have to have the most, crazy routes to run either. They don't have to have the most complex routes. So because of that, I think that, again, much like I said with the wide receiver 3 position, the different looks, the different things that we can do at tight end for the Chicago Bears this year could end up being such a big part of who we are and our identity on the offensive side of the ball, and be one of those things that we look at and say, hey, listen, Sam Roush, Cole Kmet, and Colston Loveland all had really good years. And, then you have to make your decision, of course, based off what you do after that. But I think there's a big case to be made that, these guys could end up being a strength of the Chicago Bears. And for the Bears that are trying to continue to progress as a team, then maybe you don't want to, ruin something that's a strength for you. Maybe, right? And we'll just see how it comes down with that one. Then the offensive line. I got a couple of questions for the offensive line. Number one, Braxton Jones. How does he perform at left tackle? Me, Bobby, and C-Dub had a conversation on the live stream yesterday about Braxton Jones, and I get why people have some concern about Braxton as a starting left tackle. I'm not going to say, hey, you guys are crazy for that, but I do think that some of it has been a bit overblown. Braxton is a perfectly solid starting left tackle. The problem is that one of his biggest glaring issues is his inability to really handle the bull rush, but it doesn't mean that he doesn't have strengths in other areas. And a matter of fact, with the Chicago Bears and how we, like to run the ball, that is Braxton Jones' biggest strength. And I think he's going to have an opportunity to show that this season, and he's going to be motivated too. He signed a one-year deal. You signed a one-year deal. And when you get to that point, being this young, signing 1-year deals, going back out on the market next season, whether it's to stay with the Bears or go to another team, this is going to be a really important season for Braxton Jones, and we're going to get to see what he can do with it. But outside of that, with Braxton, there's still another question that I have for this one, and that is, does Logan Jones take over as the starting center at some point this season? Does he do that at some point this season? I'm not expecting it to happen in training camp, but hell, if it does happen in training camp, I think that says a lot about how good and how ahead of a schedule that he is. But I think that Logan Jones and Garrett Bradbury, it's just a matter of time before Logan takes it over. But is he able to do it this season? And even outside of that, there are some young offensive linemen on this team that I'm looking to see, what are you guys learning from the vets ahead of you? Luke Newman, right? A guy that has a lot of potential. Caden Barnett, the Vanilla Gorilla. He has a ton of potential as an undrafted rookie on this team. Theo Benedet, a guy that's now going into his 3rd year with the Chicago Bears after losing his first rookie year to injury. But these 3 young guys, right? I'm looking at all these guys to see what can they bring to this team. How much different do they look? Do they look at the start of the season versus at the end of the season? Because if you can bring those guys along, I'm telling you what, right now, like I've said before many times, I'm excited to see how we develop. While we still have Jonah Jackson, while we still have Joe Thuney, how do we develop those guys behind them? That way, when they're ready to transition on, whether it's to retirement, other teams, or whatever it is, that we have guys that we've developed behind them that are ready to stand up. That's how you build a succession plan. That's what you need to do, especially when you're going to have a quarterback making as much money as Caleb Williams is about to make, and a left tackle in Darnell Wright who's going to be making as much money as what he's going to make. You have to continually developing those players, and I think that's going to be a big part of what we can do as a team as well. So those are my biggest questions on the offensive side of the ball. Let's switch to the defense. Let's go to the defensive line for the Chicago Bears, the tackles more specifically. One of the biggest questions here has to come to one of our free agent acquisitions last year, and that's Grady Jarrett. Grady Jarrett was decent last season, but disappointing at best, right? Which is what you can say. Javon Dexter had a perfectly solid 2025. He has to shore up that run defense, of course, right? But Grady Jarrett, on a nearly $50 million contract, did not live up to any of the expectations that he had there. So I'm looking at that. Does Grady Jarrett have a bounce back? We've seen it happen before. When players have been with the same team so long, they switch teams, they switch systems, and he was dealing with injury. Sometimes that breeds a ground that you're just going to be a little bit disappointing in your first year while you're acclimating. Now you don't have that. You have a full season under your belt with this team, another full training camp. I need to see Grady Jarrett look more consistent, look better, and bring that veteran leadership to this team. And then outside of that, the depth here. I'm really excited to see what this depth brings for the Chicago Bears between Neville Gallimore, James Lynch as well, Jordan Vandenberg. What does our depth look like at defensive tackle? That's a big question here, and I think something that we really need to look out for, because again, much like I said with Logan Jones, if Jordan Vandenberg is getting a lot of snaps by the end of the year, I don't expect him to start as a rookie, but if his snap percentage continues to rise up as the season goes on, I think it says a lot about his long-term ability on this team. He brings the speed, he brings the tackling that Dennis Allen and this defense wanted to add to this team. And I think he has a really good opportunity here to make that next step as a player and help this defensive line make that next step in the long run, but to see how much of that he brings this season. Then at the edge position, who steps up? And it's not just about Austin Booker. I almost just put it in Austin Booker. Of course, you want to see Austin Booker make a leap this season, right? 4.5 sacks last year, missing 7 games. There's a realistic conversation to be made that he can have a double-digit sack season, and that's great. But even with that, you still need more than that. So looking at Austin Booker, looking at Dayo Odeyingbo, who is not on the injury list to start off the season. So, for those that are looking at the motivated Dayo Odeyingbo, at least he's healthy here to start off training camp. But then outside of that too, like looking at Shamar Turner, a guy that, Ryan Poles thinks extremely highly on that defensive side of the ball, who is starting off injured, right, in training camp, but a guy that the Bears are moving to play more towards the edge, which he played some in college. And so he has an opportunity to provide an answer there as well at the defensive edge also. And you want one of these guys, ideally either Austin Booker or Shamar Turner, to really step up. Because if those guys step up as edges this year and start looking like something, then maybe the Bears don't have to spend that crazy money this upcoming offseason to land a big name edge. But you got to see it, right? Montez Sweat, you pretty much know what he's going to be in line for. 8.5 to 10 sack season for the Chicago Bears, but he can't do it by himself. You're going to need Dayo. You're going to need Austin. You're going to need Shamar Turner. You're going to need these other guys to step up, as well as your interior defensive line, for us to make that next step. as a pass rush and as a team. So the Bears seem to have some belief that Austin Booker can be their future. They have that, right? And so now it comes down to him showing that as well. So I hope that all these things can be what the Chicago Bears need them to be. You get those answers in that position group, things start looking a little bit differently around Chicago and their pass rush, but we got to see it. The next position group, the linebackers. A simple one here, like I thought about like Devin Bush. What is he bringing his first year as a Bear? Can Keyshawn Elliott crack the rotation as a rookie? But I think overall it's just health and consistency. Health and consistency from the linebacker position. And maybe that's me putting the bar a little bit too low on my questions for the linebackers. But I think when you have guys like TJ Edwards, Devin Bush, DeMarco Jackson, you brought back Jack Sanborn, you have Keyshawn Elliott in regards to this one also. Like you have some guys in this linebacking core that, keep in mind, we didn't get to see, a lot of TJ Edwards and DeMarco Jackson together last year. Like you have more of an opportunity now to do that, to spread things out a little bit more. I need these guys healthy by the start of the season because I think we can have, I'm not saying that we can have one of the best linebacking groups per production, but I do think we can have one of those tough Chicago Bears linebacking groups, if that makes sense, right? Like that's what you tend to think of when you look at Chicago Bears. When we're good, our linebacking core is tough. They have an identity. And I think that's hugely important for this as well. Next up, Tyreek Stevenson. The cornerback group. And I think a big part of this is a prove-it year for Tyreek Stevenson, right? And make no mistake, Terrell Smith's there, Malik Muhammad's there. Can Kyler Gordon stay healthy? Like there's a lot of questions in that cornerback room, make no mistake about it. But I think the biggest question comes down to Tyreek Stevenson because you are in a contract year. This is a prove-it year for you. And even if you do prove it, you still may not get another contract with the Chicago Bears, right? So I think in regards to this one, Deshaun Wright's gone, CJ Garner-Johnson's gone, all that type of stuff is gone. Now you guys, with better health, better balance on this cornerback crew, how do you guys look as a unit, right? As a core. And that's an important part. But Tyreek is under probably the most pressure. Jalen Johnson has got his contract. Kyler Gordon has got paid. Malik Muhammad's a rookie. Terrell Smith's bouncing back from an injured year. A lot of eyes are going to be on Tyreek Stevenson, and does he do any of that head case shit, right? And I think that's an important question for Tyreek Stevenson as well. So that's the biggest question there. And then in the safeties, it's how Kobe Bryant and Dylan Thingman balance out together, right? You have so much versatility between those two and how you can use them, like I said, inside the box, outside the box, right? In regards to that one, Kobe Bryant just won a Super Bowl, right? So, he's motivated as well after being left off the top 10 safeties lists and stuff like that. So I think in regards to this one, like you're just looking at it and saying, how does this new safety pairing work out? How do they look in their first year together? How long does it take them to find their balance together? And how Dennis Allen is going to use these guys? If this two, and I think this two-man unit is going to work really well, then you still got Cam Lewis backing them up and stuff. Like this safety group can really make this team in a lot of ways and be a lot. The way that you can use those guys versatility-wise is going to open up so much for this team. So I think that has to be the biggest question in the safety group. You have two new starting safeties. It's time. It's a little bit nerve-wracking, but let's see what it ends up developing into. So let me know down below, what are your questions for each position group for the Chicago Bears? How do you feel about it? Let me know that down below. Last topic of the day before we get up out of here, CBS Sports has labeled Caleb Williams as overrated, right? And that's interesting. They're saying this in regard to it. The high level of universal praise for Williams as the first Bears quarterback with a pulse since perhaps the pre-2010 NFC Championship game, Jay Cutler, is a little much. The reason Chicago fell behind in both their 2025 playoff games and lost in overtime to the Rams is because of Williams' inefficiency. He morphed into a turnover machine in the postseason, throwing 2 interceptions while completing 24 of his 48 passes, 50%, in the win against the Packers before throwing 3 more interceptions, 23 of 42, 54% against the Los Angeles Rams. The third interception against the Rams came in overtime and doomed the Bears to defeat. That extreme level of inefficiency in the postseason wasn't an outlier. He led the NFL in 2025 with 12 games possessing a completion percentage of 60% or lower, and no quarterback registered a double-digit number of games in that category. Cam Ward was the closest with 8 such games. The Bears signal caller finished the 2025 regular season with a 58.1 completion percentage, the second worst in the league amongst 33 qualified quarterbacks. Now, you guys will know if you've been watching the channel a lot. Me and Darius have gone back and forth on completion percentage, but here's what I'll say. I'll say this, when you say stuff like this, you do overlook the game-winning drives, the other things that Caleb Williams does excellently well, the fact that he didn't turn the ball over. But it is concerning when you do have the most of your turnovers in the postseason. But like I said, with many things that are labeled hate or whatever else with Caleb Williams, it just comes down to this. Go on the football field and prove it. Shut these motherfuckers the fuck up. And that's really all I have to say about that. You shut them up, That's the most important thing that you can do in regards to that. So, listen, you can say that Caleb Williams is overrated. I think that when Caleb Williams is throwing touchdowns and bombing on your favorite team, I want to see how you feel about him being overrated then. But we'll see, because it's all going to be told on the football field, because C-ball days are coming soon. But that's going to do it for today's episode, man. Make sure you guys sound off in the comment section down below. Make sure you guys like the video, subscribe to the channel, hit that notification bell so you never miss an episode or a live stream. You can follow us at Shy Bear Central on every social media platform. You can send us any feedback, questions, comments, concerns. ChicagoBearsCentral@gmail.com. And lastly, if you want to leave a text message and our voicemail for the mailbag, the number to do so, 773-270-2799. We're the #1 spot for everything Chicago Bears related. And I'll catch you guys on the next one. Love you guys. Go Bears. See red, y'all. Peace. See red. No. Chi-Town up. Bear down. Love you guys. Peace, y'all.
This has been a presentation of the Break Media.